Hello, my name is James, and welcome back to my channel. It's been about 6 months. In case you're wondering where I've been, it's just life got busy. I got a new job, so that's been taking up a lot of my time. I got sick twice. I went to New York for a week, and life has just been kind of happening, and the world is worse. Anyways, happy 4th of July weekend for those disgusting Americans who celebrate. Please excuse my wet hair. I don't think I've filmed a video with wet hair since like 2021. I went over to a friend's house last night. We stayed up all night watching the entirety of a TV show. Got home kind of like around 8:30 maybe, passed out, and unfortunately I gotta move this along because I do use natural lighting. Yeah, we're burning daylight. It is already late afternoon. So today I'm gonna talk about some older records from my collection that I've been listening to for like the last couple months because I've not really been keeping up with new music. For whatever reason, this year's been very difficult for me to do that. Now that my train ride is shorter, my walk is shorter, I'm not like as prone to just putting in a new release in my headphones. I've been like reading Yu-Gi-Oh! I realized like I was really into this series, this property when I was a kid. And I realized I never actually read the whole thing all the way through, so that's what I'm currently doing, and this has been kind of taking up the time that would normally be put into new records instead. So that's been fun for all of you card game nerds out there. Actually, at this point, half of this pile will already be kind of like, it's no longer what I've been listening to, just because it took so long for me to do this video. I've been wanting to film this for like a month now. Anyway, let's get into it. So for context, my boss kind of came up in like the hot topic emo, metalcore, deathcore, you know, wave of the 2000s. So she will just kind of put on some of that stuff in the lab or in the office when we're working alone. And so I got inspired to go through my collection and pull out some metalcore albums that I used to really find engaging, enriching, and I loved. And so I want to talk about couple, specifically, I guess they're all female-fronted bands, and that's just coincidence? Anyway, so the first band I want to talk about is In This Moment. Do you remember when they used to be a metalcore band? I know what they've been doing lately is that like really modern groove electronic kind of metal sound. I don't really know what to call it. It's just kind of like hard rock guitars with a lot of like hyper production. But these 3 records were the only things that they had out when I first got into this band, and to me, this is In This Moment at their peak. First off, we have Beautiful Tragedy from 2007, released on Century Media. Actually, all 3 records were released on Century Media. Then we have 2008's The Dream. Star-Crossed Wasteland. In these early days, they were really not super unfamiliar with like changing up their sound. This first album, Beautiful Tragedy, is absolutely a very hyper-melodic, almost alternative, rock-infused metalcore album. It has these like big, like epic kind of, you know, like melodic death metalcore crossover riffs and some like nasty chugs and these like arpeggiated like guitar licks that kind of like break up the verses and stuff. It's just a very engaging album that's like, it's kind of produced and meant to be commercial, but it's also very abrasive still. Like Maria's screams on this album are killer, and her singing voice was actually not great at the time. Like this was back when they were known for being a band, a female-fronted band with a great screamer, but not necessarily a great singer. Next came 2008's The Dream, where apparently the challenge was to develop that more melodic side and that more clean song aspect of that band. And this album skews a lot more melodic, slightly atmospheric hard rock. Not totally dissimilar to something like Evanescence, but Evanescence was of course more string-laden, a lot more gothic sounding, and this album is not that at all. That being said, it is still a very good record. I love this album so much. And this is the Ultraviolet. Was it called the Ultraviolet? The Ultraviolet edition with bonus tracks and a bonus DVD, which is supposed to go here in this like sleeve, but I realized that the ink was like chipping off and like part of the cardboard was getting embedded onto the disc. So what I ended up doing was swapping it into one of these guys. Which direction does this go? And so I have a 2-disc jewel case. I have since managed to like scrape off all the purple cardboard off of the disc, and it should work perfectly now. The last album they released in their early days, their early incarnation, was A Star-Crossed Wasteland in 2010. This is kind of a mix of both albums. Like, yes, it is a metalcore record to some extent, and it does have these like alt metal melodicisms. It's kind of like in between. Like, it's not as melodic death metal inspired as the debut. It still brings the heaviness, and there's still, it sees the return of those harsh vocals, but it is definitely still kind of twinkly and romantic, and has some really nice clean production. It's just all around really, really catchy. This was actually the album that got me really into this band, that made me realize I really need to go back in time and like explore their sound. This one is kind of like a somewhat of a concept album in that it's kind of post-apocalyptic themed throughout, almost like a Western. Has all these like Western motifs in the artwork and stuff. Very good album. I want to get another version of it that has the bonus track Remember. I remember loving that song when I was in high school, and I've never owned a copy of the album that actually has the bonus track, so I'm on a mission to track that down. Next is the Agonist. I don't know if you guys remember this band, but this was actually Alyssa Whitegluz's band before she joined Arch Enemy. They were kind of in that North America melodic death metalcore fusion genre. This first album is mostly a metalcore album, and it is technically actually a demo that Century Media just kind of released as an album, and they didn't want to re-record it, but the record label, I guess, decided it was not worth the investment to only get a product that is like slightly better, because honestly, as a demo, I think this thing sounds really, really good. This is the Japanese edition with the alternative artwork. I wonder if I can find the original artwork here. Essentially, the original cover is an expanded version of this picture. Hyper melodic, very political. The Agonists were always much more of a political leaning band because of Alyssa Whitegluz's lyric writing. She was, you know, vegan and straight edge, so a lot of that stuff kind of made its way into the songwriting. My personal favorite album by them is Lullabies for the Dormant Mind. Very chaotic album. It kind of leans more into those melodic death metal tendencies, but there's still a lot of metalcore throughout, and they are really like playing around with song structure and sound. There's some like chaotic keys, and some songs there's like some strings and like programmed brass instrumentation to like really give this like dripping kind of dark, like just dripping dark sound. This is personally my favorite of their albums, and though I will say that Prisoners, that came out in 2012, is more mature and does some slightly more interesting, or like, I'll just say mature, like it's a smarter record. It doesn't hit me as hard as Lullabies did. That being said, I love these albums, but Alyssa Whitegluz's clean singing performance on them across the three is not as good as I remember them. The bar was slightly lower, I guess, but I still fuck with these albums a lot. Next is Light the City. I have two albums I want to highlight. Their second album, Remain of the Gods, and their third album, Facing the Thousand. Again, metalcore, melodic death metal fusion, but I would say this band definitely leans more into those melodic death tendencies, especially in these albums, especially after their first album. That debut feels very early 2000s US metalcore. These have more melodic death metal tendencies, and sometimes just death metal. Like, I think it's the fourth track on this, The Hunt. It's a short track, it's like 3 minutes long. Like 2 minutes in, it just fully drops any like melodicism, and it's just kind of like a straight death metal track, and it's like really, it like hits really hard. I really enjoy these albums a lot. The lyric writing on these is incredible, just very very human, but with great flow and word choice. The syntax is delicious on these, and so catchy, so very catchy. The highlights are the title track off of Remains of the Gods. The highlights are Remains of the Gods and Letter to My Abuser, Fractured by the Fall, and Your Devoted Victim. And then off of the Facing the Thousand, it's the title track, The Unwelcome Savior. I love Fear of Heights, which features, oh my god, what's his name? The vocalist, the ex-vocalist of Black Dahlia Murder, rest in peace. And I really love City of the Snares. is incredible. Just this whole album is really, really strong. But yeah, just aggressive as all hell, melodic death metal from the US. They're from the Bay Area. They're local to me. Huzzah. I hope I'm not like being too much of a spaz. The last band I want to talk about in this like little metalcore listening excursion that I had in like April, May, June is Straight Line Stitch. I believe they are Southern. I want to say Tennessee. I got into this band in middle school with, this is their quote unquote major label debut. From 2008, this is When Skies Wash Ashore. This was released on Coke Records. They became E1 later, and I don't even know if they still exist, but they became E1 later. That's the band. And I believe this is possibly the signature of the singer Alexis. I can't quite tell. I got this used because my original copy was stolen. This band is kind of has two split identities, at least when it comes to their quote-unquote major label releases. Their aggressive stuff is aggressive, and like, yes, there's sections of like clean singing hooks, you know, radio friendly little bits, but when it's all hammering away and Alexis is screaming her heart out, it is aggressive. And her singing voice was never like the major selling point of this album, though it was a big way that I was convinced to pursue it, because at the time in middle school I really needed that kind of like clean kind of aspect to it. Like, her clean singing isn't like the biggest selling point. Her harsh vocals are much better, and especially in this album, like, I think her diction and her control and her aggression on this album sound amazing. And so there's kind of like a split on this album. It's kind of like the stuff that's aggressive is aggressive, and then there's a few tracks that lean more like hard rock, heavy metal, with all clean singing, and then it closes on Yesterday's Gone, which is like very tender acoustic guitar and vocal ballad. I think this album is incredible. I love every second of it. I think the only song that I've like never really fully gotten on board with is track 6, Adult Cinema, just because of something about the choruses. Something about the choruses just don't really sit well with me. But that's just one song. It's out of 10, right? I don't know. I think it sounds killer. The follow-up album, The Fight of Our Lives, released in 2011, I was in my freshman year of high school when I got this, and when it came out, I believe it was released in March 2011, March 2011? Was I in fucking middle school? Fuck. No. This was released in March of 2011, I think. I was in middle school. I was in 8th grade. But I think I was... I got it when I was finishing 8th grade for my birthday. Fuck. Holy shit. What is time? Time isn't real. I'm almost 30. You know that? Anyways, their follow-up album is The Fight of Our Lives. I like it. I don't love it as much as this guy, When Skies Wash Ashore. The biggest issue that I have for me is, like, I don't love the drumming. One, the drumming. I know, like, the drummer, I believe, was named Kinky Lore at the time. He's this, like, Puerto Rican American, I believe, or Dominican American drummer out of either he's also from the South or he's from New York. I don't really remember. I remember doing some reading about him years ago. There's just something about his, like, syncopation, these like tendencies like to mix like these like blasts with like other fills and stuff that it just doesn't sit well with me. I don't love the drumming on this, and I don't love the production of the vocals. I feel like the harsh vocals especially, there's this like they're cutting out all the high frequencies but also a lot of the low frequencies, so like it just kind of sounds muffled and compressed, and you're not like hearing, it's not cutting at you the way that they do on the quote-unquote debut. That being said, the guitar work is still really strong, and the vocal patterns are pretty good. There's just something about the lyrics, they're a little bit too rhymey in a way that seem very obvious. It's not my favorite thing, but these are like small nitpicks, right? And sometimes there's just like a weird like meter issue for me with the clean choruses. I feel like they're not as strong, they don't hit as strong as they could. But yeah, it's still a good record. It's just I have some issues with it. All right, I'm gonna try to like lean back away from the camera because I feel like I've just been kind of leaning in, and it's not great for my back, and I feel like it doesn't look good on camera. I hope you enjoy looking at my kitty cat. This is Artie, You're right, this is a new cat tree. Ignore the kitchen. I just don't feel bad, too bad, because I did in fact clean that shit Saturday. The second main thing that I've been spinning, this is like an ongoing project. I'm still not technically done because I haven't actually formulated all my thoughts on this band, and that has been a listen through of the Theater of Tragedy discography. This is a band much like the early Peaceville 3 stuff that I have previously said that I kind of listened to them more out of obligation because of their contributions to gothic metal, which is my favorite subgenre. But I've never really loved them. And so this year I started doing like a really long listen through, and I'm doing this thing where I like really take my time with an album, listen through it a few times, formulate my opinions, write this whole thing on like on Reddit in the r/gothic metal subreddit. I took a week off in between jobs and I decided I'm gonna give this band another go. I'm just gonna put on this debut while I'm doing some cleaning and let's see what my opinions are now that I'm an adult. So let's go through what I have listened through, right? I'll try to keep this quick because there's a lot to say. First up, the self-titled debut, 1995, released actually July 4th, 1995. Yesterday, today's the 5th. I don't know when you're going to see this, but today's the 5th. Yesterday was the 31st anniversary release of this album. Holy crap, I feel really old. That being said, though, this is still older than me. So, young me. Death doom, gothic, romantic, feels very fuzzy. It is, the production is of its time, totally and completely. There's no getting around that. But the songcraft is really good. And I actually do like the production on this. I think it fits the sound very, very well. It's murky and muddy, but the piano and the keys do some wonderful things. They haven't fully figured out how to write really strong vocal hooks and melodies yet, but I think what they have crafted here is pretty strong. Next, Velvet Darkness They Fear, released September, I believe, of 1996. This is on Century Media. Actually, no, they were released on Massacre. This is all Massacre. This is just the Century Media version, released in 1997. Similar style, however, I feel like because the production is much drier, it feels less gothic. This feels much more of like, it has some gothic tendencies, and some songs, like I want to say, was it Seraphic Idolatry, I think? It has a big like goth guitar kind of hook, like that feels like the lead on that song. It feels more like a Death Doom record than the debut. And the production is so dry. It's so dry. It's so dry that it kind of makes it hard for me to listen to. I don't love it. I wish that the keys and the piano were a bit more pronounced here. They could have been a bigger part of the mix and just kind of like softened everything. And because the production is so dry, the like Liv Christine's shortcomings as a singer and their lack of vocal hooks and melodies, like the good ones at least, it is so apparent and it's hard to ignore, which again, I feel like so far of their classic albums, this remains my least favorite of their stuff. Next is A Rose for the Dead. The EP, 1997's, I actually really like this EP. It's two songs that were left incomplete from the Velvet Darkness sessions that they completed them out. A re-recorded version of Der Tanz der Schatten, I think is the name of the song. But they call it As the Shadows Dance in English. This is the English version. It is originally in German for the previous album. And there's two like industrial remixes on this record that I actually really like. I don't remember who's the name of the artists that did the remixes, but they're really cool. I actually kind of like the remixes more than the original tracks. Again, I don't love Velvet Darkness They Fear. And the last track is a cover of Decades by Joy Division. This cover is technically incomplete because it is missing all of Liv Christine's vocal contributions. There was like an issue with the mastering or the mixing. The vocal tracks got lost, which I guess, takes balls to still put it out there. It's not bad, it is incomplete. So that being said, the total package of this EP I think is really strong. I don't love the opening track, but I do enjoy Der Spiegel, the other song that they completed for this, and I actually like the re-recorded version of As the Shadows Dance more than the original. I think it works. It has a better, like, more lush production sound, and there's these cool, like, little synth kind of, I don't know, like beats programmed in that I think actually add to the song than I find distracting, Next, the last of their like quote-unquote classic albums is Aegis, released in 1998 on technically not Massacre. I think it was called like Swan Lake. It's their like goth imprint of Massacre Records. This is almost not really a metal record. I know it's viewed as like a classic of gothic metal, and I'll give it that, I guess, because it is, in terms of sound, closest to gothic metal. Like, you know, sometimes you label an album or band with a genre sound or a genre tag based on what it is most closely related to, and like this band had already been ingratiated into the gothic metal world. They were super important to the gothic metal development in the 90s, and this album is the same. Like the same goes for this album, but it feels a lot less metallic. It's kind of like produced kind of like a metal record, but it sounds like a goth album, and it's super atmospheric. Just layers of keyboards. The keyboardist and the producer are like, they are in charge of this album. It sounds wonderful, and I also think that this is when they start learning how to write vocal melodies that sound really, really good and catchy, and Liv Christine sounds great on this album. I don't love the whisper talk that the male vocalist does, Raymond Rohoni. Don't love it. I wish there was a little bit more harsh vocal presence on this album, just to kind of tie it all together and give it a little bit more abrasiveness. But it is deliciously dark and gloomy, and I love it. I think it's their strongest album that I've listened to so far. Again, this listen through is not yet complete. Next up is 2000's Musique, which was released on Nuclear Blast. Industrial rock, electro pop, kind of grimy. It has some like nice groove and this like dirty Neue Deutsche Harze sound kind of coming through now. It is married to this like Y2K futurism aesthetic and sound, and it kind of affects the lyrics. I think the lyric writing is kind of dense on this, and the speech singing is not great. I actually don't like that aspect of this era for the band, is like this robotic speech singing. But Liv Christine sounds great. She's almost like embodying Madonna in this era. Like, she sounds incredible. Great, strong confidence. I appreciate it. Assembly 2002, Nuclear Blast again. Similar to Musique, but less rock, less metal. It's more of an electronic rock album, sometimes just electropop, you know? Like, I think Musique has some electropop in it. This feels mostly of that ilk, with occasional like chuggy riffs here and there. It is probably their weakest album. It doesn't have the charisma that I think Musique has. I think it's just kind of lacking in some ideas. It could use, not a repass, I just don't really know what to think of it. I enjoy it, but I don't think it's like a really good record. You know, I think it's too cheesy, it's too goofy. And though Musique sounds dated, I think this is like unforgivably so. So there you go. 2006, they found a new home on AFM. They parted ways with Liv Christine, who had gone on to form Leaves' Eyes at that point. A move that I still think people view as controversial in theater of tragedy spaces. But they did find a suitable replacement in Nell Sigland of The Crest, which is a band I also enjoy. You know, it's kind of a lateral move. She actually has a very similar timbre to what Liv Christine was laying down for those electronic records. So I totally see the vision. So they released Storm in 2006, and it is kind of a return to form. It is kind of a mix of that electro-pop commercial songwriting and the atmosphere of Aegis. It is kind of a mix of goth rock and gothic metal. And I think it's a very solid record. I think it's hooky. I think all the songwriting is super solid. The guitar work is nothing too technical, but there's some nice choppy grooves here and there. There's some nice melody leads. This is a band-driven record in a way that the last two really weren't. So it kind of feels like a breath of fresh air. The band feels alive. I think the keyboard work is great. The robotic talk singing is replaced with just normal talk singing. From Raymond, and I think that's a better move. Though again, I kind of wish that there was at least one or two songs with some harsh vocals on it to really kind of make it feel like that big career culmination that I think it kind of acts as. It's good. And then last, and I haven't really listened to this album, I think I spun it once on a walk last weekend, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to it, and that is their 2009 seventh and last album, Forever's the World. I will be spinning it more in the next couple weeks. I think I've only really, other than last weekend, I think I'd only really listened to it like 2 or 3 times since its release. So it's been about 17 years. And I don't know this album very well. This is the Scarecrow Records release. So this is the Mexican press, and it comes with the Adena EP as a bonus CD. So I'll probably be spinning both before finalizing my thoughts on this band. I have actually been really enjoying doing this listen through. I think they are better as a band than I've ever given them credit for, though like not everything that they did was a winner, let's say, you know? There's some duds along the way, and they're nowhere near my favorite band. I have found a new appreciation for them, but they are nowhere close to like what I think is a pinnacle of anything. That's my little spiel about Theatre of Tragedy. Norway's gothic metal death doom masters, I guess, is, I assume, what people view them as. I will try to be a little bit more active. I've been wanting to get back into it for a while now. It's just taken me forever. So for the future, I'll probably, once I did actually go out and get some records yesterday. So like once I like listen through them, maybe I'll do a little haul, maybe do a little recap on what new records I actually have purchased and what I have listened to. Because there was some good stuff. It's just for whatever reason this year, I've been getting a lot of like music fatigue. So like, I don't know how people just kind of like listen to one album 8 times in a row. I can only really do that if I really know that record all the way through already. Like, I'm not gonna put on a new record just to listen to it over and over and over again, because I feel like if I do that, my mind's gonna wander. I'm not giving it the respect it needs, because I like to do initial listens as a deep listen, intensive listening. I don't know. I've only like picked up like maybe tops 10 new releases this year. Maybe there's something that could be talked about there. Because it's I feel like it's not going to be stuff that you guys would expect of me. I feel like it's slightly different than my usual. But yeah, so I'll probably be trying to do a haul. I'm still trying to keep up with new music, but it's going kind of this year. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these 2 very different stacks of music. Metalcore, Gothic Doom. Hell yeah. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I'm just like trying not to talk wrong. Beep bumble, beep bumble, beep bumble, beep bumble. Ah! Little vocal warm up. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah. This isn't embarrassing at all.